Hi, good morning, everyone. Welcome to our workshop, Protecting Your Business Against Cyber Attacks. And if you joined this workshop by mistake and you meant to join the CMMC and how to prepare for it, there's a link in the chat window for you. So you can go ahead and jump on that. Okay. But if not, I hope you find our workshop insightful. So my name is Mark Masuno. I am the Hawaiian Telecom Director of Business Services and Cloud Architecture. I oversee professional services teams for cybersecurity, networking, and cloud. I'm also joined with Michael Tarako, a principal architect for security. I also serve in the Hawaii Air National Guard under a team called the Cyber Mission Assurance Team, or CMAT for short. And it's a pilot team, a nationwide pilot team. We're one out of 3 states. We're chosen to see how the National Guard can be leveraged in cybersecurity incidents or information assurance for non-DoD military organizations. Another fun fact about me is every year I travel to Indonesia to facilitate and author information exchange with the Indonesian military. We cover system hacking, incident response, network forensics, things like that. Okay, so some of the things that we're going to talk about today, I'm going to share a lot of statistics, and I hope that kind of provides an insight in what the cybersecurity world looks like today. I'll cover some of the factors that goes into the cost if an organization were to suffer a cyber attack, and talk about just the same attacks, just different flavors are happening. Then Mike will talk about some of your organization's best defenses, the basics that can be done to better protect your organization, the CIS controls, and about resources. So what does the cybersecurity world look like today? Well, the hacker culture really changed. In the 1980s, it was really about reputation or curiosity. That's why they hacked into systems and organizations. And then it kind of turned more malicious. It was more financially motivated, data theft, publishing, being sold on dark markets, things like that. And then the bar to becoming a hacker or cyber criminal became a lot lower. There were a lot of forums, tutorials, videos, tools out there that really a lot of people around the world start to get into cybercrime to make a lot of money. It's very lucrative. And now what we're seeing is a lot of organization. We're seeing groups, ransomware operators, malware, and not only groups, but we're seeing ecosystems of groups working together. There's groups that are breaking into systems and then selling that as an initial access. There's groups who are developing the malware and selling that as a service model. It's become a business, it's become an ecosystem, and it's grown exponentially. So just some statistics to share. Javelin conducted an identity fraud study, and they predict that 1 in 20 Americans will be affected by identity theft. Cybersecurity Ventures estimates that by the end of 2021, a business will fall victim to ransomware every 11 seconds, and I believe last year it was 14. IT governance tracks media reported breaches and cyber attacks. So in 2020, they tracked 1,120. And through what's being reported in the media, they tallied 20 billion records that were leaked. And so far in 2021, they're tracking 995, but 4.6 trillion records leaked. And keep in mind, this is global, so a lot of the big leaks did happen internationally. But this is a staggering number, especially considering there's only 6 billion adults in the world, and only about 4.6 billion of them are actually internet users. So, I mean, why does that really matter? But 2021 has been tough, right? We've seen some pretty substantial game-changing breaches. The Colonial Pipeline, for example, was a critical infrastructure fuel distribution company, fuel processing company. They were hit by the DarkSide ransomware as a service group. They paid $4.4 million of Bitcoin, and through an international law enforcement effort, they were actually able to get back 60 of them. But it had a lot of kinetic damage. It really disrupted fuel distribution on the East Coast, and it took over a month to recover. But the root cause was password reuse and a legacy system that didn't enforce MFA. CNA Financial is one of the largest commercial insurers. They were hit by the ransomware, and the actors did have access to the network, but through the investigation, they did determine that no policyholder information was stolen. But this is a trend, and including XXL is another insurer who got hit in Singapore. But the trend is that actors are targeting organizations that have cyber liability insurance. So when these insurers are getting targeted and attacked, if that list is provided, then those customers who do have it are targeted, right? And it's because the ransomware operators know that they have a cyber liability insurance policy, so there's a higher likelihood of a payout because of that. And T-Mobile, what I want to highlight here is two things. One is, because of technology, we're so intertwined with different things. T-Mobile's hack was pretty eye-opening. They were storing a lot of information, and really the only piece of information that prevents someone from going and SIM swatting if they got a copy of that information was your PIN. So you're really just protected by a PIN number. But also the second thing is that they held 54 million people's insensitive information, including past information. And there's really no reason to keep the sensitive portion. It just creates more risk, and it just becomes more damaging. So a poll is going to pop up, but what kind of threat is your organization most worried about? Is it ransomware, data theft, denial of service, or insider? And we will review the poll results towards the end. So what are the costs? Oh, there's the poll. So what are some of the factors that contribute to a cost of a cyber attack? During an incident, you organizations will probably incur investigative and analysis costs. They may have to bring in outside third parties to do forensic and investigative. Some of the recovery efforts will include costs. You may have to buy additional systems, hard drives, or even cloud servers to get business back into operation. And a loss of business. And if you see a lot of the publicly traded companies like Target, SolarWinds, T-Mobile, they all took a stock hit after a breach. And a lot of times too is if you don't have the right protections and the defenses in place during the incident, it's that much harder to respond to it. And a lot of organizations, if they don't have adequate logging or detection mechanisms to kind of fully scope an incident, then that's where they're going to have to purchase additional defenses such as EDR and logging platforms just to start collecting data at that point in order to actually respond. After an incident, notification and credit monitoring, if people's personal information was stolen, whether it's your customers or your employees, possibly facing a class action lawsuit for not doing the due diligence of protecting your organization, so attorney fees and litigation. If you're part of a regulated industry, you can face regulatory fines. Then you're going to have to make these unbudgeted cybersecurity improvements that you weren't prepared for, and as well as insurance premiums will increase, or possibly you could lose out on a renewal, right, because of that. So the IBM's Ponemon Institute publishes an annual report called The Cost of a Breach. And this year, between the data that they've collected and surveyed for the time frame of 2020 to 2021, they estimate that the global average cost of a data breach is 4.24 million, which is up 10% from last year. For US organizations that responded to the survey, the average cost was actually 9.05 million. And if for incidents that involved remote workers who are working from home, it was $1 million above the global average, which is 5.24 million. And of course, there's not many organizations here in Hawaii would face those costs, but you can kind of see that there is a trend that damages are increasing. So, you can take kind of that ratio estimation of what a Hawaii organization or business would have to pay. And, there's a lot of factors that we talked about that contribute to what would be the actual dollar amount that you would pay if you suffered a breach or cyber incident. So the same attacks, different Nigerian prints. Oh, sorry. Here's an example of a fish that I investigated a couple of years ago. This was targeted to assistant director. This actually came from a local organization, and it was a partner organization. And they were using Office 365 to obfuscate the fish, right? So if you're looking at some of the indicators here, you're seeing that it did come from an email account that the person does know, and it is using a pretty legitimate service, right? Office 365. So if you're hovering to discover over that link, you're actually going to see that it goes to live.com, right? So it's going to open a OneDrive page, but inside that OneDrive page, that OneNote, it's going to have another hyperlink that's going to lead to the actual phishing landing page. So here is the phishing landing page, trying to harvest obviously Office 365 or Exchange account credentials. And if you look at the URL, it's onedrive.gdg, blah, 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 dot wholesale restroom.xyz, right? So if you're kind of applying the basic security awareness techniques at the first level, right, you're kind of, for your users, they're going to hover to discover, they're going to kind of see, okay, this looks legitimate. Okay, I need to sign in, that's pretty normal. But, down the line, 2 or 3 levels, it might get to the point where, okay, this is the indicator that something is wrong, and maybe that account didn't got popped, right? But this has been a trend. I've seen this quite frequently, and the goal of targeting the account that was used to send the fish was to leverage a known entity to further reach their victims, or to actually get to an organization that matters, right? Some notable trends, some of the large breaches, they didn't find out that they were breached until someone told them about it. T-Mobile denied that the data was leaked, and then after they did some digging, they confirmed the breach. And then more cyber criminal groups are adopting leak sites. 17 of the major ransomware as a service groups last year, 15 of them adopted leak site tactics, right? So even if you're applying backups, there's pressure to pay the ransom because they're going to leak your data, right? And then you'll have more damages to worry about. So the second poll question: if your organization was hit with an incident, how prepared do you feel about your organization to address the threat? Not prepared, neutral, prepared, extremely prepared, ready for battle, and maybe we should talk about getting a job at Hawaiian Telcom too. But yep, please take a time to answer the poll. And here's some averages, average times to detect and contain. This was a statistic provided again by the IBM Ponemon Institute. The average time to detect based off of their surveyed participants, 212 days to identify a breach. That's a really staggering number for an attacker, not only to be in an organization, to be able to move around, take their time, take as much as they want. But also, if you're on the response team, if you're the organization that got breached, do you actually have logs going back to 212 days, 230 days to actually tell, okay, how did they get in? What other devices were infected or hacked? What is the full scope of this breach? And then, of course, the other one, 75 days to contain. This is like actually fully scoping, fully identifying the incident, and then figuring out your strategy of how you're actually going to address this. So what does that mean for businesses and consumers? The trend is only going to go up, right? I mean, 4.6 trillion just in this year alone is really staggering. Leaked credentials. I mean, if you go to Troy Hunt's, I think Evan mentioned this, haveibeenpwned.com. You can see statistics there of how many account information he actually has. Right, leaked information and credentials will continue to be available and out there. Right, so good cyber hygiene is absolutely needed because those are tools that the attackers can use to compromise accounts and compromise your organization. The profits from cyber attacks will fuel more attacks, right? This is becoming a very lucrative business. It's encouraging a lot of would-be attackers. And like I said, the bar to entry on this is getting lower and lower. And disruptions to the supply chain will affect business and receiving goods. It's definitely a trend that we're seeing in fruition now with solar winds, with even the meat packing plants. The solar winds, the attack, the malware distribution happened in July to September of 2019, 2020. Everything's a blur. Work from home. But the actual news broke out in December. So for cybersecurity teams, do you have logs that are going back all the way to July and October of that year in order for you to kind of determine whether or not you're affected by this? Okay, and to kind of review the poll results, let's see. So the first poll we asked was, if your organization was hit with the incident, how prepared do you feel your organization is to address? Actually, that was the second one, but not prepared was 22%. Neutral was 34%. Prepared, very good, 36%, which is the majority. And 8% said they're extremely prepared, ready for battle. Very good, very good. And then the first poll was, what kind of threat is your organization most worried about? The highest statistic, 43%, was ransomware. And I absolutely agree. I think ransomware is the number one threat to businesses today, just because of its popularity, its effectiveness, its frequency that we're seeing it, more organizations being popped, and the techniques that are being used to leverage it or to initiate it. The next one, 38%, was data theft. 6% said denial of service, and 13% said insider threat. So thank you for participating in that. And now I'd like to hand it off to Mike Traco, who's going to talk about ways that you can protect your organization. Thank you.
All right, everybody. Can you hear me? Good. Yeah, so I just wanted to kind of add on to what Mark discussed. He was kind of focusing in on the threats that are out there, things that are in the wild currently. So, probably what most people want to know is, how can we protect ourselves and then our businesses? So just a little bit about me, some housekeeping. Mike Taraco, principal architect over here at Hawaiian Telcom. So I got a whole bunch of these things. I guess I'd like to take tests and I can pass them. So if you know what all of these are, then you probably don't need me. But just my background, also 10 years experience designing, implementing, auditing security controls, policies, and systems for small, medium, and large customers. Worked through a various number of businesses, local businesses in Hawaii. So have financial, state, government, and also some healthcare background in there too. So kind of curious about all of those different types of businesses that we have. So yeah, tried to learn a little bit about that. So yeah, I think the second part is answered as well. So yeah, so kind of, how can we, fix some of these problems or prevent us from having them in the first place? So, there are certain like hygiene methods that you can do. So some of the questions that I would ask myself or my organization is, do you have policies that address, current cybersecurity? So a lot of us have policies that were developed 5-10 years ago. Maybe they get updated once in a while, but there's a lot of new things out there. So you might want to, kind of look into those different areas so that you're covered at least. What are your compliance requirements? A lot of customers that we've seen have, PCI, they take credit card data, healthcare records, HIPAA, and then SOX for, some of the bigger companies that are listed on, the stock exchange. So there's a whole bunch out there. There's financial as well. So yeah, those are some things to think about, and those can guide your policies a bunch, and then also, how you do your business as well. So along those lines as well is how critical is your data that you're trying to protect. If your data is not very expensive, or you should not probably implement a control that costs more than the value of your data. So that's just something to keep in mind too. A lot of times people buy silver bullet products that are very good at what they do, but they're very, very expensive. So if the cost to protect your data is more than the actual underlying data, then that's something you want to avoid or do a different way. And then also, how many of you have had a cyber security event or incident? I think a lot of us, are aware of it. I know we don't want to talk about it too much, but yeah, those things are kind of eye-opening a lot of times, and kind of make us think more seriously. I'm sure management and the C-suite or the directors of your company are curious to know what you're doing and how you're doing it. And then also along those lines, if you do have a ransomware event or some sort of event that can bring down part of your business or all of your business, how long can you afford to be down? A current example would be like Facebook on, I think it was Monday, where they were down for 5 hours. So that was something pretty significant. But then again, Facebook is not like a hospital serving patients or anything like that. It's social media is not something that, life and death situation. So it depends on your organization. So yeah, what do we do? So focus in on the basics is where I tend to start. Find that framework that meets your organization, and then use that baseline to align to what you already have in place. For example, there's a good one that we like to use generally is called CIS, Center for Internet Security. And they have 18 controls. It's the latest version 8.0 that we can access. It's available publicly, so you could download that. You just have to put in your email address, and they sometimes send you some emails. But within that also, there's a tool that they have called CSAT. So also we have on the handouts part, we actually have a handout that has lists out those 18 controls for CIS. So if you want to download that, you're welcome to. And then a way that you can evaluate your organization's implementation of those controls is a tool called CSAT that's available for free. And then depending upon how you want to answer it, you can actually do it yourself, the self-assessment tool, or you could have a partner kind of step you through it and help you go through that. So there's local vendors that can help you with this, including ourselves. So the basics for the controls that I like to focus in on is, a little bit outside the CIS as well, is the policies and procedures. So these are things that our auditors always ask about. And, the problem with the policies and procedures are you could write whatever you want to write. They're going to check to make sure that you are actually following those policies and or procedures. So some of the ones that I recommend if you're starting out or make sure that you have in place would be password policies, because passwords over the last 5 or 10 years have changed quite a bit. I would, if you're not already doing it, implement multi-factor authentication, MFA, and then at a basic level, AUP is acceptable use policy. So letting all your employees and contractors understand that when you're using a device that's provided by the organization, those things are monitored, and then some controls on there to prevent having those machines getting taken over. One of the first things that I always ask, and that you should ask as well, is know your inventory, both external and internal. When we look at assessing businesses, sometimes we find out that there are things that are still on the network that should have been taken off quite a while ago, but they're still actually powered on and in the environment. So those are things that you would want to be aware of and then remove them if you could, especially since the operating systems could be old and vulnerable. Next step would be vulnerability management. So once again, focus on the basics. So patch management should be a a monthly cycle at least. There may be things that come up in between them, but this is a good way to kind of show management the value of, having IT staff so that you can show that your machines are being patched on a regular basis, and then also the configurations on those machines, creating golden images of certain operating systems and also other devices in the environments. A great place to start and actually continue. Sometimes they get dropped off once it gets started, but you want to keep those going. Next part is administrative privileges. So you want to make sure that they're controlled. Excessive use of domain admin or other power users in the environment could potentially lead to problems. And then using those privileges, you want to work off of a jump box, so you're not opening up email on the same machine that you're logged in as a domain admin, because that would be a way that malware could get directly onto that person's machine and could cause trouble for the environment. And one of the important parts too is having an incident response plan. So who do we talk to? Who do we who do we contact in the company, and who do we contact outside of the company? A lot of insurance providers require that you have this. So if you don't already have it in place, we'll want to get through that so that you do have that available. Okay, let's try to keep moving this. So continuing on, focusing on the basics, monitoring email systems and malware defenses, browser protections as well. So those are things that you should have, across the entire organization, not just on a few machines here and there. You want to have a console for those malware defenses as well. If you're worried about ransomware, backups are the key to recovery of that. So I think Evan might have touched upon it, having 3 sets of backups. You have 2 that are connected, and then 1 that you remove, so that just in case everything gets ransomed, then you could actually have a backup that's not connected to your environment to recover from. Protecting data, like PCI card data, you would need to protect it at rest and in transit. HIPAA, also same thing, it needs to be protected at rest and in transit. I'm just going to blow through this because I think we don't have too much time left here. But yeah, need to know access. Make sure people in your environment need that access. If they know, if they were in another team and they, migrated out of that team to another, do they still need domain admin if they're not in IT anymore? Those are things that you should probably be reviewing on a regular basis. And then wireless, make sure your wireless is configured and tested properly. And so that, public guest wireless is not connected to the internal network. That's a great way to get across if it's misconfigured there. And moving on, so what are the different risk methods that you have to? You could have acceptance. So basically, you accept that what the situation is okay. If you do that, you would want to document this and have management sign off to protect yourself as an IT person or a security person. Most difficult, but what you should probably do is identify and fix those problems. So say, for example, you do a security scan, you get results. They'll have methods on how to either upgrade patching, configurations, and other types of things that can usually be relatively easy to upgrade. If you're on an old OS, you will have to migrate to a new. And then transference. Transference is a word for basically insurance. So you're going to try and transfer the risk over to an insurance company. But unfortunately, the insurance companies generally want to make sure that you are actually doing the right things in your environment. And then avoidance is just pretending that the problems or issues do not exist. So I don't think that's a great way to go, but some people do it. So how can you make sure your cyber hygiene is good? So you could either do it with internal teams or external teams. So, evaluate the problem, look at, do your own scanning, and then make the corrections. But a lot of times IT staffs in Hawaii are pretty slim. So, there's a lot of local vendors that can help this process and have a lot of experience with that. So, assess, prioritize, and then guide the remediation and report on it for management to show that you're getting into a better situation. So key takeaways, give yourself some time to plan, make progress, and commit management. Align with partners if needed, and allow the team to focus on the task at hand. So if they're doing, their regular day job and then also remediation, it's kind of hard. So generally give them a little bit of space to do what they need to do is a good method. So before we get to our QA session, I wanted to share a special offer with the audience. Every business is a little bit different, so it's important to assess your business needs. So to help sort it out, we're offering a free cybersecurity readiness assessment with one of our security architects. That would be probably Mark or myself. So no matter what stage of cybersecurity planning you're in, it's a good opportunity to see where you're at and where your cybersecurity posture is. So we just have the screen up on there, a link up there. So if you want to, please sign up so we could kind of step you through our basic assessment and then kind of talk through it. All right, with that, I'll give you a few moments to sign up if you want. And now we have our QA session. So Mark, I don't know if you had a chance to look at these yet, but
yeah. So there's a great question in the chat I wanted to give you a chance to answer. The question is, are there samples of small nonprofit organizational policies and procedure available?
Absolutely, yeah. So that's something that I work on quite a bit with, regular commercial businesses and then also nonprofits as well. So that's something that we do. There's actually, I believe, SANS Institute has some like bare bones examples out there. So I will pull that into our chat. Just give me a minute here. But yeah, SANS has some good examples of basic policies that you could use. And I will put the website into the chat. Just give me a second. So we also have been doing this quite a bit for many of our customers as well. So a lot of times the bare bones are a good start, but they need to have some sort of customization in order to get them to where they need to be, right? Yep, here we go. So it's sans.org. So a couple of our certifications that we showed earlier actually come from SANS as well, because they're one of the security and networking organizations that can help out in here. So if you just go in here and here we go. I just pasted it into the chat. Yeah, so if you go into the resources, there's some templates in there. You could search pretty easily. Even for some of our clients, we use that as a baseline, and then we help tailor it. Okay, here's a good question. I don't know, Mark, if you want to.
Well, you can read it out.
Sure. Carissa says, what do you recommend if a subcontractor you do business with has been hit with ransomware and you don't believe they're mitigating it properly and have not provided more information on what happened? That's a good question. So lately, there's been a lot of third parties that have problems. I think Mark went over it in his presentation about I forget which application it was, but a lot of companies use that. So they should be providing you, based in their contract, they should have a right to audit. So the right to audit will allow you to get information about what happened and how it happened and what controls are in place. If it's a smaller company, it might be a little bit more difficult to do. But if they're a listed company on the stock exchange, they actually have to report that information in like a SOC 2 in like a SOC 2 report with specifics around what was changed, what happened, and then what was changed. So they're required to report that.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was gonna mention as well. It starts with the contract that you have with your subcontractor and putting in cybersecurity and third-party risk uh, controls in there so that if they are, are they taking the necessary steps to protect themselves and your data? And then if there is an incident, what is the reporting and the mitigation processes that they're going to have? Without that, the contract language is definitely going to be your I guess your ticket into getting the information, the detailed information. But at that point, it's going to if it's not in there, it's the relationship that you have with the subcontractor, and it's on them to provide the confidence that they're addressing and protecting themselves adequately for your business.
Yep. And if you don't have that verbiage in the contract itself, the best way to do it is like for future contracts, you want to make sure that the right to audit and then actually conveying that information is included. So there's some language that you could use going forward. If it's not in there in currently, then that might be a problem, but they should be able to address that for you. Okay, so we have another one
Mary
from John.
Phillips. Okay, go ahead.
No, go right ahead.
Okay. Mary Phillips
Two-person panel is hard sometimes.
Yeah. Mary Phillips asked a pretty interesting technical question for work from home. What should we do to ensure that wireless networks are remote workers are connected to are secure? So that's kind of a difficult one. I mean, other than if you have monitoring and you're able to pull what wireless networks are actually cached on the computers and to determine if they're using like the VPA2 encryption. That's kind of where you have to go. It's you can provide security awareness training and you can have a checklist that they can report up, but from a technical aspect, you got to get on the host itself. Let's see. John Chalk, can you talk about some of the tools apps you use to secure organizations? I hear about CrowdStrike a lot in the CNBC News. How do they prevent attacks, even zero-day attacks that they could? Sorry, the questions pushed everything. Zero-day attacks like the Chrome ones going on now. So it's definitely a defense in depth perspective, right? I mean, there's like Mike mentioned, there's no silver bullet. CrowdStrike is an EDR tool, endpoint detection and response, and it's the next generation of antivirus, right? So antivirus, they use signatures of known bad malware, and when it matches, when a file is written to disk, it'll scan it, do a hash, and then look it up on signatures. If it matches, it's bad. EDR, what it does is it collects a lot of system information that's happening, and it tries to detect malicious actions based off of system information, not just whether or not a binary or DLL or script is matched.
And it's on the endpoint itself too, so that if you catch it upfront on the endpoint as opposed to it being in your network, that's a better method. But like Mark said, it's not, you can't just have one thing that's going to solve all your problems. You actually need a combination of, they call it, the buzzword is defense in depth, right? So if EDR misses it, if AV misses it, if your network IDS misses it, you want to have something that can catch it. So I think, CrowdStrike is a great tool, but it's not something that, just by having CrowdStrike, you're going to be good. You have to think about it a little bit more broadly, is my suggestion. So I hope that answers the question. Next one is from Amara. How safe are identity protection services? After breaches, I noticed that companies offer free identity protection. However, I'm concerned what they could be hacked as well. You have a valid concern. Actually, some of my data was included in the T-Mobile hack, so they offered me, to sign up for the identity protection thing. So in order to sign up for those things, you need to put a lot of personal information in there as well. They ask for your social security number. They ask for emails associated to you. They ask for, you could go down to like bank account, credit card numbers, all those types of things. So the more information you put into it, the more good information you'll get back. So I actually did some of it. I didn't do the whole 9 yards, but they told me that one of my emails was breached. I knew it was breached for a long time, so it's not really, the password's been changed several times since then. So I think there's some value in it. If you're not looking at your credit report, if you're not looking at some of the security alerts on your bank accounts, it's probably a good thing if you want to be kind of hands off. But if you have a good handle on it, I don't think there's a huge value in it. But once again, I wouldn't let a company like T-Mobile or whatever off the hook, because it costs them money to sign you up for it, and they should do something for breaching your data. You should make them pay for it.
Yeah, and there's four major credit bureaus now. I forgot what the fourth one is called, but it's not just Experian, Equifax, and shucks, I'm having a brain fart. You should look it up, and you should lock your credit on all four. It's just so as breaches are happening, all the time. If someone does try to conduct identity fraud against you, you can at least try to prevent some of the things that require a credit report.
Yeah, and if you are going to do a purchase on like home or a car or something like that, you could actually, I think they call it SAW your credit, so that you could actually they can check your credit at that moment. So yeah, those are some of the options. But yeah, I don't think identity protection services is the full answer. I think keeping an eye on it yourself is a better way to do it. But I mean, it can't hurt if you want to be more hands off. You just hope that those services don't get breached as well. Oh, Innovis, Cursor just added.
Yeah,
cool.
TransUnion and Innovis, yeah.
Okay, so Derek had a question here. So what resources are available, if any, in helping develop an incident response plan? So there are some templates out there. SANS.org has some templates out there to get started. But incident response is actually really tailored to your organization pretty closely. So it depends on what you're trying to protect for your data, how big your organization is. There's a whole bunch of things in there. So we could respond to that after, and we could send over some information about that. Okay, I think that's all of the questions that we had. Thank you everybody for your time. So sorry if we couldn't get to all the questions today, but please post them on our Hawaiian Telecom University LinkedIn group page, and we can continue the conversation there. You could scan the QR code on the screen and join our group. Mark and myself and a few others, Evan and Jordan from the main group, have actively checked that and respond to questions that come up on there. So if you'd like to further talk about your business's cybersecurity needs and requirements, please sign up for the free cybersecurity readiness assessment, and you can meet with one of our security architects. It's a good opportunity to see where you are with your business's cybersecurity posture. So yeah, take advantage of that if you can. Thank you for joining us today. Aloha, and have a great day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.